Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of our Everlast Adventures podcast. So today was a little bit of a shorter month because we only had the one stream. But as always, I am Dane, your host, and we're joined by the creator and mastermind behind the world of Everlast, Kyle. So, hi, Kyle.
Hey, it's great to be with everyone. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yeah, so speaking of Christmas, oh man, any fun plans for the holiday season ahead? I mean, currently when we're filming this, we got a week still till Christmas goes.
Got a week till Christmas. As far as personal plans, we're just going to be celebrating Christmas here in Japan, just my wife and I, and then we're going to go to the in-laws' house the day after Christmas and spend New Year's, because New Year's is the big holiday here in Japan. Christmas is just kind of fun. We've been seeing lights and doing all that kind of fun stuff around Tokyo, but we're going to go back and be with family for the New Year's, which, again, it's the year of the rabbit. So a lot of really cute Miffy and all that kind of stuff everywhere. So it'll be fun.
It's Japan. You got the cute things everywhere, and especially the rabbits. They're so cute, right? You have to make the cute things of them. But nice.
Where in Colorado, we have wild rabbits, and it just baffles everybody. I remember when my wife was back there a couple years ago when we were still engaged, and she was just like, oh my gosh, there's cute rabbits everywhere. And I'm like, well, they're wild and dirty. So.
Yeah, don't touch them. Get some disease from them. It's good stuff. Same thing for me. Just kind of relaxing, staying local. I got pounded by a snowstorm, blizzard this past week. I know you're down in where you're living. It's a little bit more mild in temperature, but up here in Akita, whoo boy, we are just getting pounded with the winter weather. So probably just keeping it local, staying local for Christmas and the New Year as well. Get some time off from work, which is going to be really nice.
That'll be nice.
It will be nice. It will be nice. But speaking of which, we had session 16 of Everlast. We're only covering the one session, and it was a banger to end the year on. Again, our last Everlast stream for 2022. Isn't that crazy, Kyle? I can't believe it. We've already been streaming for a year. It's crazy.
Well, that's the crazy thing. So I think we started, maybe 7 months or something.
7 months, yeah.
But it's just like time has flown, and already 16 episodes in. That's crazy. It's really crazy. All on Aishin Island, too. Some small island in the middle of the ocean.
Well, I mean, as we're going to be talking a lot today, I know, about the behind the scenes about the game. Because, again, we only have the one session to really talk about. I mean, we have a lot to talk about. But we're going to be deep diving into a lot of the behind the scenes and how this game has been going kind of from the start. But in particular with the last few sessions, right? And
Absolutely.
So that's definitely going to be interesting to see. And I'm curious to see if things speed up a little bit just based off of us being used to getting it streamed, and actually having the game a little bit more fleshed out as we continue to go. But it's really exciting. We have a lot of really fun things planned ahead, I guess, for it. But before we really get going, Kyle, do you want to get into any disclaimers or anything before we really jump into the details of Everlast?
Yeah, absolutely. So Everlast is a game that is currently still in production and creation. We're in the playtesting phase of it. And so things are changing every now and then. You might notice on the official streams, maybe some things are a little bit different. But that being said, we're actually bringing this to you early so you can kind of have a little bit of hype, a little bit of excitement for the game before its official release. That being said, it is copywritten by myself, Kyle Lafont, and Fantasy Forge Studios, and it is basically ours, and don't take it. You may use it for your own homebrew, like D&D campaigns and that kind of stuff before the game comes out, so you can, play your adventures in this beautiful world of Everlast. But basically just don't claim that it's your game. It's ours, and we put our heart and soul into it, and we want to be able to bring you something that is not necessarily something that we're not proud to give you. So we're doing everything that we can to try to get to you as soon as possible. But in the meantime, the ideas and everything that are in here, it's our intellectual property, so don't take it.
Yes, we have our eye on you, I'll tell you. But no, yeah, we also have some fun announcements to announce at the end of today's, podcast too. So stay tuned for those. They're about to be really, really fun, and lots of really fun stuff coming up in the new year for sure. But without further ado, Kyle, let's just get right into the nitty gritty of it. So session 16. Oh boy, what a way to go off with the last stream of the year, of the last stream of 2022. It was literally just a giant combat encounter, which was awesome.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it for sure.
kind of the first glimpse that the party has gotten at siege warfare. I
Hmm.
mean, kind of like a small siege. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun to put together,
Hmm.
and fun to see kind of how the battle played out. One thing that was really interesting that I really thoroughly enjoyed about it is the fact that the battle wasn't just your typical, oh, I go up, I smack them and they die. Like we saw all the different players, like Belbin. I mean, we were joined by Belbin and Yuki,
Hmm.
and then they were controlling some other characters. But I felt like Thordane was really useful with his bow up on the wall doing his thing. But Yuki, first time ever using a bow
Yeah.
in
Hmm.
combat. Um, Both Zill and Belbin were using spears
Getting some
during
experience
that.
with those. It's hilarious, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just having some glancing pokes through the portcullis. But there's like a lot of different maybe tactics that the party haven't been able to use before, like in just open combat, where
Hmm.
pretty much every one of the other encounters has been to some degree.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that it definitely felt very different than all of the other battles we've had, and I had a great time. And as you mentioned, like I was controlling Thordane the whole time. It was really fun for him because usually he's okay and he does some stuff, but he really shined. It just reminded me of like Legolas being on top of the wall of Helm's Deep and just being able to pick off all those orcs down below. And Thordane just came in clutch. We were able to use a lot of his skills that I haven't necessarily been able to use effectively in previous combat encounters. And
Mhm.
Thordane, and then Yuki, as you mentioned, she was able to use her bow, and we'll get into a little bit about that. But before we get into it, Kyle, do you want to give a quick little overview of the events that led up to this siege battle that had happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those of you who haven't listened to the actual sessions and you don't want any spoilers, go back and watch those before. It is only one session this month, but if you want to go do that, now's your chance. All right.
Okay.
So if you're still with us, essentially what happened is the group Eclaas Eeas, they made their way to Flomberge, which is an island or a city on the island of Aishan Island that is at the base of Aishan Volcano, where they found out the great dragon Nazrahim lives. In that session, or last session, some of the details were mentioned a little bit where
Mhm.
the flame pillar itself has kind of been waning, and they were speaking with now Goric Cragheim, who is the king of that city, and trying to figure out what's going on. And so essentially during the last session, the group went to kind of investigate that a little bit. The volcano has been exploding and erupting, and they found out that actually the lava flows inside Flomberge are relatively new.
Mm.
It hasn't been an active volcano for at least in the current age. And so it's giant lava flows going through the city, which the city is built to withstand those, being right at the base of a volcano. And
Mhm.
with the flame draken themselves, they're acclimated to that hotter temperature.
Mhm.
Um, but the group, they went to the base of Aishan Island to investigate the flame pillar to just figure out what's going on. To which they discussed all kinds of possibilities, with maybe the potential of maybe there is some kind of wicked magic, some sorcery that's going on inside the city. To which Luxalia, leading up a troop of the guard of Flomberge, went to go investigate to try to find the source of that.
Mm.
And so Luxalia was gone for a portion of, well, basically the entire session.
Mhm.
And from that point on, there was actually um, two guards came and to Nalgoric and told them kind of the plight of the city. Not only is there an active volcano going right now, but there were a fleet of ships, three specific ships hoisting the colors of the Bloody Bosun, which is a pirate kind of gang organization
Mhm.
that has been around the waters kind of in the northern section of Aishan Island for a little bit, but never have they come and tried to basically breach the shores and send any kind of people up to talk or attack Flomberge. But it was three ships worth of basically corsairs, pirates that are making their way up to the top. And so now Goric Cragheim uh, asked the rest of the group, so Thordane, Belbin, Zill, and Yuki, to go investigate and potentially find out what's going on while he deals with the rest of the stuff that's going on in the city of Flomberge. He's a king, he's got a lot to do. And so the group made their way, and without much conversation, um, this group of Corsairs just decided to, lay siege upon this gate without much explanation and not much opportunity to be able to discuss or make any kind of plans, or even for the party to understand like why they're doing this.
Well,
And so, yeah, the group engaged in combat, defense against the bridge, the northern gate of Flomberge.
yeah, and that was, I think, kind of it in general. Was like when the party got up. I know, just speaking from my own mindset going into it, as a player, but also like through the eyes of Yuki. Obviously, when there's a bunch of pirates coming into the island, it's concerning, right? And she was just under the impression that maybe they were just trying to get some money or anything. She was not expecting, at least Yuki wasn't expecting them to just come charging full force at the gate. Luckily, again, we had some really freaking sick NPCs with us who actually did a
that
lot.
was pretty good.
Usually in the past,
I was rolling pretty high. That was good.
In past sessions, we've had NPCs who have been next to useless, I should say. Not useless, but next to useless. But these NPCs, these gold Draken guardsmen that we've had, they were helping quite a bit. But basically, yeah, this entire 3 ships worth of Corsairs just attacked this gate. And I guess we'll just get right into just the nitty-gritty battle details of it. I know Yuki initially went up with Thordane on top of the wall to be able to potentially try to reason with them. I know the pirates came, and I know Yuki did intimidate them, and I know Thordane, using his wit and will, shot warning arrows at their feet and whatnot. I know it did keep a couple of the Corsairs at bay for like a turn or something, but ultimately they didn't listen to reason. They just came rushing right towards that gate. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Absolutely. And again, we do have to take into account that the point of the story that Eclaas Eeas is in, they're far over leveled. And so for those of you who did join us and did see that combat, I know it was a long combat. And yes, there were a couple spells that were used, a couple arts that were used that helped a little bit. But essentially, what this was is Eclaas Eeas' first look, as far as the streamed content and the current rules of Everlast, of what siege combat looks like. And so, in essence, what a siege combat is supposed to be in most games, but in this encounter specifically, the objective was essentially to hold the gate for a certain period of time before something could have happened. Yes, Eclaas Eeas is much more overpowered than they should be. As like a normal adventuring party at this, and so you just got to throw everything that you got at them, and just let them handle things as Eclaas Eeas handles things. So you do have to realize that at this point, at level 7, they are far above the skills of just like a typical pirate. Where the normal adventurers, this is probably about like a level 3-ish encounter. And they're and yes, it's a lot of enemies, but they've got a gate, they got a portcullis, they got backup to be able to help them. You maybe hold some of these at bay. But instead of like, let's say like an average of like 4 guys dying a turn, you might get 1. And it's just like, it's a slow basically picking them off until they either eventually breach the gates or they're able to hold them off for the amount of time to be able to complete whatever encounter it is.
Well, I will say too, with Yuki in particular, yes, we're overpowered, and yes, we laid siege, and we did work. We killed everyone. Spoiler: we killed everyone who was attacking the gate. However, it didn't come without its like casualties, I guess. Like a couple of the guards died. I know Yuki got really close. I think she got down into single digit HP at one point.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, she did get to, like, and I know Belbin wasn't doing well at the end of the battle. I think Thordane was doing okay. He was like the only one who's like, well,
Zill was doing okay,
and Zill too, but they were doing okay for the most part. Like people weren't really like aiming at them, but Yuki was getting pounded by those crossbowmen. I know early on, and so that's part of the reason why I decided with Yuki to actually leave the wall. Partially is because she just kept getting hit by them, and lo and behold, she goes.
Crossbows are tough because they're They're a heavy weapon,
Mhm.
and yeah, there are some drawbacks to being able to use them, but they're a D16. And so the three main ranged weapons in Everlast, you got your hunter's bow, which is a light ranged weapon. It has a shorter range and it does 1d8 of damage.
Mhm.
You have the long bow, which is has a kind of like a middle range, and that does 1d12 of damage. And then
Mhm.
you have the crossbow, which has a much longer range and it does 1d16 of damage. And so you have these guys that, yeah, maybe they're not super strong in melee combat, but they sit at the back at long range and basically just pluck people off.
Yeah.
Although on the wall, you did have the in the way checks, which I'm sure actually
True.
helped.
They actually did help quite a bit. I know there were a couple times that you were saying like, yeah, thank goodness you had the in the way check because that would have been a crit kind of thing. So
Yeah.
definitely did help. And honestly, she only got hit a couple times, but she's a DPS. She doesn't have that much HP in general. And I know just like a couple hits landed on her, like half her HP basically.
When
Um,
especially having the kind of the patronage, like the base class of a bard,
yeah.
they actually start with lower HP than
Mhm.
most of the other classes. So it's kind of difficult to be able to catch up to the rest
Mhm.
unless you're the defender class of them.
Yeah.
But
True.
as a DPS class, like Yuki definitely, I would say, I think in the party is kind of like middling as
She's
far as
middling, yeah.
the
She's not like I think Luxalia has the least. Thordain might have the least
Thordain
actually.
might have the least.
Thordain
Yeah.
and Luxalia have less than Yuki, but I'm pretty sure Belbin and Zil have higher than Yuki do. So
Yeah. Yeah, and which makes sense because both of them have like the highest base, which is like the D12 plus whatever for that. And so Belbin, the way as a martial artist, he is very much meant to just be you're up at the front lines, taking damage and taking blows when you can. And then obviously Zil is just soaks damage. He's a sponge.
yep,
So that's his
very good.
job. Not hitting things too often, which is again kind of surprising based off he's carrying a +2 axe and he hacks I think he has like a +4 to his melee or something.
Yeah. Well,
So he should be hitting things, especially like just like regular like
it,
pirates,
it's
but
a testament to how poorly Max rolls. At least when it
that's
comes to
true.
his attacking, it is hitting hit rolls.
That's true.
It's okay. We forgive you, Max. We forgive
It happens.
you. And then there's Yuki on the other hand, where she basically hits everything, but she can get pretty beat up quickly if she's not careful about it.
Mhm.
But one thing that was really cool about Yuki, I know this is one thing that Everlast is really trying to push as a game, whereas I think D&D really emphasizes specializing with one weapon and one kind of weapon, whereas Everlast, there's benefits to being proficient with multiple kinds of weapons that you can be, you know? And so
Mhm.
Yuki's actually really been training. Like I know in the holiday phase before, she'd spent some time training with her hunting bow, and it actually worked out really, really well for her being able to sit on top of the wall with Thordain, being able to shoot. Yes, she
Yeah,
only has
take
the
actually I think she killed a couple of
yeah, well,
guys
I don't know if
with
she
it.
actually killed anyone with her, but she might have, to be quite honest. But she hit a few times and actually did a decent amount of damage. Again, her issue, because most of her stats are put into her physical melee attack. So how the Everlast hit chart is, it's not just like one roll to hit. There's a ranged hit and then there's a melee hit, right? And I
Or like
invest.
how they deal with this in D&D, it's like I think the ranged hit or the ranged hit is associated with agility,
Mhm.
where the melee hits is associated with strength.
Yeah.
Where in Everlast, it's just an accuracy, and then basically if you have points in accuracy that you can split between ranged and melee.
Yeah.
And so for Yuki,
She
go ahead.
split. Yeah, she split. I'm pretty sure she min-maxed pretty a lot. So she put most of her points into melee because she wasn't expecting, at least I wasn't expecting to use any ranged with her, and I only put 1 point into my ranged, meaning I only get that +1 when I'm attacking with a ranged bow or anything, which is fine. Honestly, it's okay. But she hit a couple times, which was nice. So I rolled well enough, I guess, to be able to hit, which was nice because it gave her some experience too, and it was fun using Yuki as kind of a ranged character. I mean, it's not going to be her main source of damage, but it was cool being able
Clearly, yeah.
to
But especially in the kind of combat that it was, where like you're not, and I think that's where Belbin was struggling a little bit. It's kind of I remember at the very beginning of the combat, just kind of looking at Connor's face specifically in the combat. It's like, well, what do I do? I'm sitting behind a gate. I'm
Yeah.
sitting behind a portcullis. Like, what am I gonna do? And that's why there's the spears, so they could just like jam their spears through and fight whatever's on the other side.
Mhm. Are there
And so
are
they were
there
able to do so.
are there any ranged weapons that a martial artist is proficient in or would be able to use, or is it just kind of like pick whatever you want and you can
So
attempt to
the
get
ranged
proficiency?
weapons I mentioned in the game,
Mm-hmm.
as far as light weapons go, they actually have kunai. So kunai are basically these like throwing knives that they do 1d4 of damage, but you can throw up to 3 of them at a time. I
Okay.
know Belbin has those equipped to him, and they work as using the ranged modifier, where
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to you can actually like throw light weapons in general
Mm-hmm.
that have like the throwing trait. Like for example, daggers, you can throw a dagger. They do 1d6 of damage, some more, but you can't throw 3 of them at a time.
Yeah.
And so the kunai are specifically that. I know he's used those in the past. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if he's trying to get away from that, but he has that as an option.
Mm-hmm.
But it's difficult to throw through a
Through a gate.
portcullis,
Yeah.
essentially.
Or even
He
on
could
top
sit
of a wall.
at the top of a wall. He probably could be able to do it okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I know Zill, his main form of range damage is he has his cape, but
Yeah.
he also has
Throwing
basically
axes.
throwing axes,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. And you can use those to certain degrees to be able to be somewhat useful.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like having just like your main weapon be a bow like Thordane, just like sitting up and doing his thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so what it does is sitting behind a gate, it forced the both of them in order to be, somewhat part of the combat, to use spears to keep people off the gate from whacking. And I think this brings us, to a good point where we're talking about balancing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As far as that goes, sometimes it's actually quite difficult as a creator, and if for those who have experience in creating scenarios and whatnot, until you really get the feel for just the way that the game flows in like every situation, it's difficult to determine some things. Like for example, I would say for Yuki to be able to go up against the gate.
Mm-hmm.
So the portcullis itself had a 20 defense value.
Mm-hmm.
Yuki could use her swords with, what is it, like a +9 that you
It's a
have
plus
to hit?
9, yeah, that she has.
+9.
Yeah.
It's relatively easy, but these guys have like a maximum of +4 to
Mm.
be able to hit against, and so that's a basically critical. So the only way they can hit is via critical hit,
Mm.
which would have hit anyways. But they're just sitting here just pounding against this. And so one of the things that I very much found out is I really need to lower some of like the base DV of certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually is more of a chance for them to break through, because not only did they have to break through a portcullis, they had to break through a gate, which obviously those defenses held up very, very well, even in the face of the bomb that the bosun threw.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, too, I know like for a lot of the battle, obviously the crossbowmen did a number on Yuki, and I know the little fire demon things that were appearing at least kept Belbin and Zill busy a little bit. But I think speaking of balancing, it was the first time I've ever used this item. One thing that's really cool about Everlast is the use of accessories to be able to do certain arts that they're equipped with. The necklace is the biggest one. Is that correct? That you can
Yeah,
equip?
so necklaces have basically, you can have up to 6 slots of accessories equipped, and a necklace is going to basically, it's 3. And
Okay.
usually the thing about necklaces that are kind of above, and so the other ones are like rings, the other ones are like boots, and like just like things that you can put on. But as far as jewelry goes, necklaces are big because they have gemstones that you can use to basically throw basically arts and stuff into. So they come like imbued with like an art. Some of them come with traits, so like passive things that your player can have that are always in effect. But
Mhm.
the one that specifically Yuki had was basically this necklace of thunderstorms.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what is it? I think it's a gold. Oh gosh, I forget what the specific gem itself is.
Might be
But
topaz.
I think it is topaz. Yeah, a gold topaz necklace. She's had it for a while, but she hasn't been able to use it, especially because in the last dungeon we were inside, and unfortunately this specific art works outside. It doesn't work inside.
Only.
Yeah.
So it doesn't work if like you're underground. It doesn't work if you're like in a cave. It doesn't work if you're in a building.
But
So.
I had it prepared, and I've had it on me for a long time, but I completely forgot that I had it, and then the battle was starting, and I'm like, okay, I have my bow and I'm ready to be aimed. but I have this necklace that I haven't used, so I wanted to try it, and we found out that at least as it stands right now, it's a little bit broken. It's a little bit broken.
Well, it's broken, and one thing too that I realize, and actually, a little bit in depth. Yes, I do watch who's actually watching the stream and everything. I noticed the numbers start to go way, 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 way down
Yeah.
as far as viewers go when I started having at the top of each round calculating how everybody getting hit by these
Lightning.
things,
Yeah.
by this lightning, which was tough because it was a siege and there were so many enemies. It's basically like at the top of the round, an entire round worth of attacks, even more than that before the round even began.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like I think when you are a player and you have an item like this, especially if it's not being streamed, you don't care like who's watching. It's really cool to see this item just go boom, 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 destroy everyone. But when you're kind of, on camera, and not everyone can be the gifted Matthew Mercer and make that every single turn very interesting. I mean, it's just kind of the same thing over and over again. And for the sake of brevity, you kind of just want to go through, you get your online dice roller up, go like, boom, okay, they passed, these people didn't. Okay, boop, boop, boop. This is how much damage they do. You go to your character sheet, boop, boop, boop. You have to mark all of the HPs of all the characters, and it's a lot. It's a pretty strenuous process for a and so I found that, just for the sake of fun and also for streamed content too, it's not necessarily great because I know it's not like a ton of damage that it puts out, but when it's the damage to everyone, that's tough.
Yeah.
Where like it would be so much easier just to be like, okay, here's 5 characters that it affect, boop, 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 roll 5 dice. These people pass, these people don't. These people take damage.
I just still think it's a hilarious image. There's like a volcano erupting in the background. These pirates are just rushing onto this island to overthrow Flamberge. They're going across a freaking lava river, and then there's a raging storm around them. Everyone's getting struck by lightning. There's little fire demons. It's just like, it's literally the worst time for them to attack a freaking island. The image is hilarious, but I completely agree with that. And honestly, as it continued to go, I'm like, this item is a little bit broken. So obviously it's the play testing status, right? So I don't mind like an item being nerfed a little bit if it's just.
Well, and also too, it's a pretty rare item to get. And for those of you who don't know, yes, this is episode 16 of the official streamed content, but we had been playing for 2 years previously. And so they've accumulated a lot of items, and as Everlast has formed, because it started as a D&D campaign, with like my Everlast like lore and history and everything on top of it. And then once I was able to come up with kind of an original combat idea, implementing that, a lot of the stuff in D&D just doesn't fit in. And so some people lost items, but this is one of those items that were able to be carried over. And it's pretty good. And I would say even in like a combat, let's just say if you're in a combat where you're fighting like a couple of like big monsters, obviously it doesn't have quite as effect as if it was in a combat against an entire army of smaller things, where like even just like the small amounts of damage to everyone, like you don't even have to do anything as far as fighting, and they all just like die naturally, like on the other side of this gate.
I will say, I'm pretty sure the necklace was the only reason we were actually able to defeat all of the pirates, because it was just doing passive damage every turn. I know technically it wasn't hitting that many people. It was maybe hitting less than half of the dudes every turn. But when you're fighting low level corsairs, right? Like that's 2 hits by a lightning bolt and you're pretty much knocked out, you're pretty much dead. So
exactly.
So it definitely did do a lot. And then once the gate finally
once they opened,
because it never actually got broken. I do want to talk a little bit about the gate itself. I know you mentioned it a little bit earlier and whatnot, but I honestly do think the necklace was the reason that we were able to completely clear everything out. I apologize if that messes up any story ahead.
No, not at all. Actually, and that's another thing when you're a DM, when you're a Fate Weaver of these kind of games, being able to play on your toes, because there are, I know, like in D&D especially, a lot of very broken things. Like for example, the wish spell, very, very broken at high levels, and so you have to be able to learn to and a lot of, like, I would say, like D&D content, like if you're just playing the stories and you're not doing a homebrew, they have a lot of like restrictions and stuff that it's like, okay, this has happened before this big bad guy dies. He doesn't actually die, he escapes, but like the combat like stops at that moment, and then there's like dialogue and stuff that happens and he's able to escape without actually dying. So like as a Fate Weaver, you have the power to be like, oh, they weren't supposed to kill the bosun, but Where like obviously in this case, like I let them kill the bosun and they get to do whatever investigation they want in order to figure out what the bosun
Yeah,
wants.
we might
I
have
know
just made
some
it hard on
parties
ourselves, honestly.
maybe, but I know like some parties, the way that they play these games is they're always like, I want to keep like somebody alive to interrogate or like things like that.
Hmm.
Where Eclaas Eeas is very much like hands dirty, just if
Well,
there's anything that's a threat, we're gonna do what we can, especially if they show any kind of violence towards them.
Belbin. I would say Belbin more so than anyone. He's just ready to kill anyone with his fist. But I would say like probably Yuki would have been a little bit more hesitant if it wasn't for they were just like they just seemed like they just wanted to raid the island. It wasn't any like there wasn't anything behind it. She tried to do any sort of talking with them. The bosun wouldn't listen. None of the pirates listened. And so at this point we were just trying to stop the onslaught. And like when you get to the end, you finally get to the end where we're still having to fight a bunch of fire demon things that were appearing out of the volcano. I think this was one of those times Eclaas Eeas just couldn't leave any survivors. It was just one of those
But
things.
it's interesting too. Like I want, and going back, like as a player, Dane,
Yeah.
one thing that's really interesting is, yeah, they didn't listen at all. Even with, I think you had like a 14 charisma roll
Yeah,
in
it
order
wasn't
to like
bad.
get them. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's something to keep in mind. Like when you, for those of you that are playing games like this, there's usually a reason that like the rolls are like high or like almost impossible to get in order to barter. There's usually a reasoning behind that. It's not just a DM being mean. It's not just a
Mhm.
Fate Weaver being mean. And so like after the battle, it's like and that's where the last session ended.
Mhm.
It's like, what do you do as players going forward to be able to, figure that out? Like there's some questions maybe that are there that Eclaas Eeas might have to experiment with, figure out going forward. Is like, why weren't they listening?
I'm not
That's something
worried.
to think about.
Thordain's a man of science. He'll figure it out.
That's true. That's true. And again, the nice thing about the party is like everyone's well-rounded as far as that goes. So that's good.
Although all of Thordain's scientific endeavors up to this point almost got them killed many a time. He's just
Well, sometimes you have to do a little poke in the line in order to figure out the line's dangerous, right?
I guess. But we'll figure it out. It was fine. But yes, speaking of which though, like I think a big reason again we were able to kill him was the gate was able to hold as well as the lightning storms. Of course, we had the little fire imps that were appearing as well. We could talk a little bit about that, but I'm curious. Like you were saying that this gate has a 20 armor value for a level 3. Technically level 3, I know it was increased threat level for our party, but for technically a level 3 campaign, I feel like if you have to roll a nat 16 and you're doing no damage against something, is there any way to be able to actually do damage to structures like effectively in this game?
Well, there's a thing. There's a thing called or not impact damage. Impact damage is a damage, but siege damage.
Okay.
And essentially, what that is they're like things like boulders. It's essentially structures. So,
Mhm.
like, let's just say a couple examples of this. If you're trying to break down a door,
Okay.
a gate,
Wait,
if you're trying to.
Wait. So you're telling me Yuki's donkey kick does siege damage?
Yuki's donkey kick does not do.
No, why?
It's impact damage for sure.
But she does it all the time.
She does it all the time, and she's strong, so a lot of the times it hits. But like for example, if you're doing like battleship combat and you're like throwing cannonballs at another ship, like cannons are going to be doing siege damage. But essentially what they do is if you land an attack, like for example with a normal weapon against like a gate, all the damage that's done is halved. Where siege damage is its own damage type that it does just the full damage to that and the full damage to everything that's around it too.
Gotcha.
So it's basically like, think of it as like kind of things like super strong things that are like would destroy like a gate, will bring a fortress down. That's kind of like the siege damage type stuff. Like shooting arrows at a gate might barely damage it a little bit, but like if you're shooting like flaming arrows or like explosive arrows,
so
like that's gonna do a
does
lot.
fire do siege damage then to wooden structures?
Fire does not do siege damage. However, wooden structures have a special thing where essentially whatever the case, the fire, whatever, if you roll a certain damage to the gate with the flame, then you can potentially light it on fire. And it depends on the object. And what that does is it actually weakens the DV of the gate itself. And so as it begins to burn, the DV goes down. So it's easier to hit.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Hey, you learn something new every day as a player.
True.
But nice. Cool. I mean, that's nice. I know the bosun tried to set the gate on fire, but he threw a freaking bomb at that thing. Oh boy. So that, I'm assuming the bomb did siege damage. I'm assuming.
Bomb does siege damage, and it killed half of his army, especially like his like melee attackers in the process. And again, that's me with bad strategy.
Thanks, bosun.
I mean, and part of it too is the bosun rolled so low on his initiative that turn where I had already moved things, and then by the time I realized, like, I was running out of turns to be able to do things, and so I was like, oh no,
well, they could have jumped into the lava.
Well, and that's the other thing, is it's not like they were just fighting over a river; they're fighting over lava, which is like for creatures that are that low, it's an insta kill. So I don't know how you're surviving.
I know at the top of your head you probably don't know exactly, but for example, say Zill fell into lava, would he die instantly?
No, he wouldn't.
That's good.
Zill's HP is too high, but
would
like
Yuki die instantly? She's got 81 HP.
Probably not, but I don't think she could survive 2 turns.
Nice. That's about right. That's how it should be, right? Lava's gonna eat you away, regardless of what you're doing.
You're gonna get some sweet magma burns all over you.
It's gonna become Anakin. I got it. I get it.
Yeah.
I hate you. But yeah, no, I definitely think we saw a lot of mechanics that we'd never really seen before, at least in the streamed sessions, including the siege damage, including all of that, which was really nifty, and I really liked it. And I know, like, going through again, we'll have to talk to Connor a little bit about what was going through the back of his mind. I mean, we can kind of, I think, infer first and foremost, like, he went at the very end to open the gate. He was the one, well, not technically it was Zill. Technically, Connor through Zill was the one who went to go and open the gate. So what can we deduce from that? What do you think?
I think Connor, especially with Belbin, what he saw, maybe at first, he was probably glad. Like, he would have opened the gates right away if he was just like, oh yeah, like, we could take it. Like, I could see them. He had everything in his power to be able to do it. And I think that's why he was like, okay, I'm going to take these spears to be able to weaken, and obviously use Zill to the same effect, to be able to kind of, like, weaken whoever's trying to come through. However, as I think the big one was when the bosun killed, like, the main, like, force of the Reavers, or it was at a point where it's just like, even if these guys came through, I think everyone would be okay, especially having Zill.
How did that make you feel, just like seeing that they did everything, and then you put all this fight up against this gate, and then Zill is just like goes on over and just opens the gate. All right, come on in. After he just killed everyone.
Well, no, and I don't know if you remember, but there was the one part where it's like they almost blew up the gate, and then Zill went and closed the gate, and then it's like there's nothing I could do because I didn't have any guys that could put up the grappling hooks, and so they would have just, like, sat there and died slowly.
By the lightning
and then it was almost kind of like mercy, the fact that Belbin opened the gates for me to get through, because I had lost. And I was actually talking with Dane a little bit beforehand, just, again, some of the balancing, but maybe giving these pirates, like, in the final, like, version of the released content, like, some kind of siege damage to be able to use against the gate. And especially with, like, big armies like that, like, a lot of the smaller minions don't have a lot of arts and stuff to use, but they have some. But a lot of the times I just don't use them because it slows things down for the streamed content. So,
well, especially when they're massive armies like that, like, I'll tell you.
Exactly.
Yeah. It makes sense. And, like, the one thing about the Everlast, definitely combat does take a little bit longer than D&D, for sure. But again, it is not D&D. It's a completely own game, and one thing I love about Everlast is the fact that it takes a lot of elements from a bunch of different elements of games. Like, when you're playing a session of Everlast and there's a big combat, I love it because it's like the entire session's this combat, and that's awesome. And that's really fun. It almost feels like a war game in a sense, in a way, as opposed to like a tabletop RPG. Of course, you can add your own little flavor here and there, but it's not D&D, and it's its completely own thing, and it's just as good, if not better, in my opinion. It's different, but it definitely makes you really have to think through the strategy. Whereas I oftentimes think in D&D, it's just like, okay, run to one place. You might do a little bit of voice acting, might do a little bit of role play, and then just roll a dice, and that's it. That's all it is. Whereas this, there's so much going through your mind. It's all about the positioning.
Yeah, that's my big thing is like the positioning and the movement has become so much more important, especially because unlike D&D where it's just one initiative for the entire encounter, it's new initiatives every turn. And again, yes, it's more dice rolling, but what it does is it allows you to, with a little bit of luck and chance, but it makes, like, for example, the dexterity a lot more important, the dexterity skill. And as far as like placement and doing things, like, for example, during the movement phase, there's certain actions that you can only do during the movement phase. During the attack phase, there's certain actions you can only do. Like if you initiate a combat challenge, you can do a lot more than if someone initiated a combat challenge against you. And so what it does is also with different arts and stuff that exists through the game, it makes a lot more ample opportunity for support characters to be able to use support things to be able to help as far as moving things around. As Dane had mentioned, like you take D&D for example, and most people it's like you attack and you heal. Tanks don't really exist. They kind of exist in some of the classes as far as like this class just has a bunch of HP and so it's harder to hurt them. Or everybody can equip armor based on like certain like strength values and that kind of stuff. But in this game, like everybody has a certain role to play. And as Dane had mentioned, like they held the gate pretty well, but both Belbin and Yuki weren't doing so hot at the end of it, but their jobs aren't to soak up all the damage. That's Zill's job, and he was totally fine by the end of it because he was soaking up damage.
He came in clutch at the very end. Like he got everyone's attention once the gate was open, which was awesome. Like Bosun was still alive. We still had a bunch of those magma demons attacking. And also Thordane. I know Thordane, I mean, obviously I was controlling him too, but obviously he was doing his job on the wall as a support. He's not meant to do a lot of damage. He was doing a decent amount of damage just because people weren't attacking him and he was able to shoot. But he was filling his role too. I know he was healing Yuki on the wall when he had the opportunity. He was decreasing enemies DV with one of his skills. I know he was even increasing some damage and stuff on some of those rolls based off of his supporty stuff that he has. So even Thordane's someone who I feel like has just been support before, really shined in his support role, but he also did a little bit of DPS damage. Again, not being a complete tank, or he's not a tank, but not he did stuff actually. Like this is, I think, Siege Warfare is where his class shines, I think.
Well, especially as a support, like he's not meant to take a whole lot of damage. So you throw him behind something with half cover, and he's going to have a much higher chance to survive. And so being at the top of a wall, having that half cover is very beneficial to him. Where if the gates are breached, if the gates are open, like Zill, that's where he really shines. For sure. And also, I think to a degree where Yuki, as long as Yuki and Belbin have like a supporting force in order to kind of draw some of the attention, they can keep the attention where Belbin and Yuki just go through and just like take care of the numbers of things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've seen that in previous sessions too. Like Yuki and Belbin usually hold their own. I mean, it really just depends on how many people are hitting the two of them, you know, or how many they're up against at one time. But I mean, even Yuki, I know we've again, speaking of balancing, it helped trying to balance Yuki and like especially her dual wielding skill. In particular, but she still does a lot of damage. That's what she's meant to do, right? And yeah, definitely everyone works together, and if you just have one single unit, it's gonna be really hard to succeed.
Well, I also want, like, when players are playing the game, I want the choice to be difficult, which path they're going to choose. Because if there are, like, certain classes, like, for example, like, subclasses, I would say, like, the path of the Blade Dancer, people just see, like, oh, I'm going to throw dual wielding, and then, like, I can literally do anything. I can take hits, I can deal all the damage, kill everything, and also support like crazy. Like, no one's going to choose any of the other options. And so it's, you know, that fine line of being able to balance things between, it's like, all right, yeah, you do have all this damage, but unless you are having support. And like, for example, you have those characters, like I think of Final Fantasy 14. A great example, it's like you can't go into a dungeon without a healer. Everyone's gonna get wiped. And it's I kind of want it to be the same thing in Everlast, where, you know, people just overlook because, oh, they don't do a ton of damage, and but no, they help in all kinds of ways, whether it's through passive traits, whether it's through arts, all kinds of things. Like, they have so much that they can do and so much that they can bring to the table to be able to help support the rest of the party survive.
Is there any way in this game, because obviously I know when you're playing tabletop RPGs, they're meant to be played with people, you know, like
Mm.
obviously you need groups of people to be able to do so. But oftentimes I think one of the biggest barriers to getting into tabletop RPGs, not just D&D, but just anything, is just not having people to play with. And so is there any way designed in Everlast, especially since it relies so much on having like filling roles and stuff, that's able, for example, smaller parties who may just have like 2 or 3 people playing? I know it's suggested to have higher amounts of people playing, but say you're only able to have a party who has like 2 or 3 people.
Each story, so the way in the final product, how it's supposed to go, and again, don't take my word completely, as it is, as things still might change, things are still subject to change, but most of the encounters that I'm building are meant for basically 5 people, 4 players, a minimum. However, there are different things that are going to be in the books where you can do it with fewer people. However, most parties are going to be in there with at least 4 characters, depending on the levels, but also depending on, like for example, NPCs. You can bring NPCs along with that, either the Fate Weaver can control, or the players can like kind of take as like their selves in control. So again, if you're playing, and levels 1 through 5 too is still kind of trying to figure out what you want. You haven't chosen your path yet as far as whether you're going to be an attacker or a defender or a support. So you're still kind of figuring that out. And each class up until that point have like a little of each that they can dabble in to be able to be like, what do I want to do? And also based off how you place your stats, you might be better at certain things, obviously. So that, with that being said, it'll be easier to take NPCs, and at higher levels, take higher level NPCs with you, almost as kind of like part of your party. Adventurers Guild is a great place to be able to go for that. I know the Adventurers Guild doesn't offer a ton to Eclaas Eeas with their level as what they are, but that's a good place to basically be able to recruit people. Like, let's just say you have a party of 2, and it's like, okay, well, we kind of have like an attacker and a defender, or an attacker and a support, but we really struggle with trying to stay alive. You can get a tank and maybe another attacker, or bring 2 tanks with you, or whatever the case is with you, to be able to help you survive. It's supposed to kind of work as, you know, teamwork and figuring things out. And it might be fun to play 2 different kinds of characters, so you can learn how to have that strategy.
I will say it is manageable. Obviously, I've been playing Thordane, and I hope Jonathan's doing okay, but he's been away for an extended period of time, right? And just me even being able to control Thordane, it's kind of nice, especially with the pace of the battle and how it is. It definitely feels like if you're controlling like an extra character here and there, it's fine. It gives you, you're more active into it, and
Well, it gives you also a little bit more time to be able to look and learn while other people are doing other things.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is like there's a little bit of time between each of everyone's decision making and stuff, so it's doable. It's definitely very doable to be able to control multiple characters. And just a little bit of an aside, I know we've mentioned it in previous podcasts before, but can you explain to everyone at this point in the story, as a level 3 character, when do heroes in Everlast actually decide the path that their character wants to take, whether it be DPS, whether it be support, whether it be a tank class? When is that? Is it around this time during the main story, or is it earlier? Is it later on? When is that?
So it depends on the story you're playing and the adventure you're playing. And so it's not necessary. I mean, it's usually around some kind of event, some, you know, especially if you're playing not like the EXP gain, but you're playing by basically progression. That's going to be at level 5. So in Everlast, heroes, they start at level 1 and they go all the way up to level 10. And with that being the case, most games, like single adventures, will take a party from level 1 to 10, or maybe from like level 5 to 10, whatever the case. But the way that it's supposed to work is when you hit level 10, characters are halfway through their potential growth. There's other skills and arts and different things that they can add basically off of AP, which is ascension points. And so every time you gain any kind of experience in combat, you also gain ascension points, which you can do and like spend. And each certain skills, as laid out in the path trees and whatnot, you can basically spend those during holiday actions to learn new ones. And so you still, even at level 10, you still can grow as a character all the way up, but it pretty much limits your HP from becoming like god level and like
Mm,
things like that. And
yeah.
so you're limited in some abilities as far as like the amount of actions that you can take, your HP when you hit level 10, but the arts and stuff, additions to your stats, additions to your different equipment that you use,
Mm-hmm.
it all can still continuously improve up
Mm-hmm.
until obviously their maximum
Yeah.
capacity in that.
Mm-hmm.
But where they learn to choose their path is actually at level 5.
Okay.
And so party, basically they have their class, which is their patronage,
Mm-hmm.
starting from level 1, and they gain traits and arts all the way up to level 5. And then all the way up from 5 to 10, they still gain traits and arts in that specific patronage, but they also gain stuff in their subclass, which is their path, which is where they choose either to be a physical attacker, elemental attacker, defender, or supporter, which each of they're in each um path or each patronage, there are 4 paths, one of each. And
Okay.
so if you for example start off as a bard, you can go into the 4 paths. The physical attacker is the blade dancer, so you
Mm-hmm.
could decide to do that. Your elemental attacker is going to be the storyteller, so there's a different kind of bard there. And then you have the con artist as the defender, so that's another thing. They kind of have more like tricksy stuff to be able to use defense and
Mm-hmm.
tank things. And then you have the musician, which is kind of like, I think, what most people think of when it's like your typical bard. They have some healing stuff, and they also have some kind of like dice manipulation type things that they
Mm-hmm.
can do to be able to assist party members and stuff. So
Yeah.
each class has something like that. Each patronage does. And so you basically, all the levels 1 through 5, it's kind of the feel of what you want, especially how you're placing your stats
Mm-hmm.
too. That can help you to decide like how you want to go. But once that happens, most parties will be like, all right, well, I want to take this path. Okay, so if you chose a physical attacker, I might want to do an elemental attacker. Or since you're doing a defender, I might want to be a supporter, vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you have some time to be able to think of like, what do I like? What's my play style before being locked into a play style for the rest of your campaign.
Mm-hmm. And obviously too, once like the game's out itself, and like you're gonna have all the content to read ahead and take a look at all the skills. Obviously, when we were making our decisions, right, we are just like, oh, like what seems cool to you. Obviously, we did our best to try to make sure to mix and match that we were getting all the spread and whatnot that we were getting, but ultimately. We were just kind of like, oh, we don't really know what we're getting ourselves into, but how badass does it sound having a bard being able to be a blade dancer? That sounds so cool. And so like when the actual content's out, you have all the opportunity to look ahead and be able to decide what fits your playstyle the best.
And you don't have to deal with the issues that I know some of the players in playtesting have been dealing with.
Mhm.
Like, for example, I know there were a couple players that like chose the class and the path that they wanted because it's like, not only does it fit with my character, but I looked ahead and saw what they did, and it's really awesome. And at this point, with all the playtesting and everything that's gone through with
Mhm.
balancing, like they've completely changed, and they were really upset, and they had lots of problems with not only motivation but also, and again, this is something with playtesting that the pros and cons, you get really attached to your character, and when someone's going in there and fundamentally changing them and how they
Mhm.
work, it's not fun. But you also have to realize, like, when you are in the playtesting phase, we're going to bring out a product where you can look ahead, you can look at that and be like, okay, I know that my character won't be changed now and
Mhm.
going forward, and how you want to be able to play it.
Exactly. Well, and even just then too, like you can, that's the great thing about starting off as just like a class, like a bard class. You can decide those first 5 levels, like what you're looking for and like the things that you want. For example, I know that if I wanted to say I really loved bards and I wanted to play a bard, if you're playing D&D, well, too bad, so sad. You're going to be playing one type of bard pretty much the entire time. Whereas in this game,
And there's a couple different paths that you can choose that are slightly different, but a
yeah,
lot of them, they're kind of like your tech characters, where it's like
yeah,
you almost kind of slip more into a permanent support role. And
exactly.
again, there's certain things in D&D you can do to kind of maybe bypass that a little bit. I get that. And there's a lot of versatility and all kinds of things that you can do in D&D, to especially if you know the game really well.
Hmm.
But in Everlast, you have the potential to have a very lethal attacker and a very good support.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You can make that decision. You can look ahead on like what you want, and say you want to play multiple campaigns, but you're like, I really like Bard. You can decide to be a storyteller in one other campaign. You could decide to be a blade dancer. You could decide to be a con artist. There's a bunch of different options, and you can keep replaying over and over again. The replayability is just amazing. You can be the same class and just have completely different outcomes, you know?
Exactly.
So, that's awesome, and I absolutely love that. But I mean, we saw in this battle that we still had a pretty diverse group of our party. Obviously, we were missing our main support healer, but we really did have to work together to destroy every single one of these pirates and bandits, and not bandits, but pirates and corsairs that were coming at us. So, yeah, it was pretty good. It was pretty good.
It was fun on my end too. Like there's always something that's satisfying about just like throwing hordes of bodies at this gate and just like seeing the party. I mean, I'm a little bit biased. I do root for my players too. It's fun when I see them succeed and, you know, do fun stuff. Yes, I know it is frustrating when you have a broken spell or a broken art that goes and just like fries everything, but you know, it's still fun to see, like, you know, even how close it came down to the wire. And yeah, maybe the siege didn't end how like the typical siege is supposed to, but it was very satisfying to see, like, you know, the party was able to take care of them with 4 people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it was difficult at the end. I'm glad we had the wall to be able to do so, to help us out a little bit. But ultimately, it was a really fun way to end the year. Honestly, just like a really big, fun combat encounter. I hope every single one of you really enjoyed it as well. And if you haven't seen it, please go back and watch it. It was really, really fun. It'll be available on YouTube as well. But yeah, it was really good, and it might be a little bit slow compared to like the very dynamic storytelling of a lot of D&D groups, but it's its own game, and it's really fun once you learn the rules and once you really become familiar with the battle style. I'm sure even viewers will enjoy it just as much as
and it's still in its play testing phase too.
Sure.
You have to remember that going in. It's just like, oh, maybe there's some things that don't work, and if you do notice those things, feel free to type them in the comments. Like, we're here for your criticism and how, you know, things are supposed to work, and these podcasts are supposed to tell you our ideas behind certain things as far as the creation of the game. And so, you know, it's still, some things are still up to change. And if you maybe have an idea of like what would maybe work better in certain situations, or maybe, you know, something feels a little wonky and like you have maybe an idea, like maybe that's some good things for some internal playtesting to be able to think about doing.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. And I mean, we're in this together, ultimately. Yes, we're producing it here at Fantasy Forge Studios, and obviously this is the brainchild of Kyle. But we couldn't do any of this without your guys' support and you being here along the journey with us. I mean, it's one thing when we're just playing a game by ourselves. Yeah, it's fun, but we want to create this game for the world, and we believe it has the legs to go the distance. And we really appreciate each and every one of you for joining us in this adventure, in this journey. And how cool is it that, I mean, again, I believe this is going to be the next big tabletop RPG that's going to be coming out. It has the lore, the gameplay, the story. Obviously there's still things we need to work out, but it is an amazing game, and I look forward to it every single time we play it, and hopefully you guys do as well. And if you want to be able to enjoy it in the future, there's definitely a bunch of different ways that you can be able to support the game itself. And I know we have been promoting the Patreon for quite some time up until this point, but we actually changed it up, like a little bit of the tiers and stuff. So Kyle, do you want to talk a little bit about some ways that you can financially support the game as well?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to those patrons who have been at it and, you know, just have been supporting. You don't realize even your little amounts to be able to support have helped. And again, this is something that I'm doing as my full-time job as well. And, you know, it's difficult helping my wife bring in a paycheck. And so like your little bit does help towards the creation of this game. That being said, I did realize that, you know, we've been pretty stagnant as far as, you know, some of the new people subscribing to the Patreon and whatnot, and we haven't seen a lot of movement. And honestly, probably part of that is, you know, one, my fault, because you know, I didn't give you something that you're willing to, you know, pay a little bit more for, or like pay for. And so like I totally get that, like you want something out of the money that you have, especially for those who do subscribe right now, like being able to utilize the interactive stream content. So we have we have three levels right now. So there used to be only two, and now there's three. So there's more content that you can look forward to. So at the $5 level, so that's the minimum, you basically allow each month that we play, so every 2 sessions as of now, you have one hope that you can be able to give the players in Eclaas Eeas. And what that does is it's a reroll, take the higher of the roll. And so basically you're interceding through fate to be able to, possibly help them. And in the past, it has actually been really useful. They've gotten really good pieces of equipment, armor, that kind of stuff. It's been able to help survive.
Looks all he didn't get stuck into a portal. That was nice.
Exactly. Looks all he didn't get sucked into a portal. Like, it's been really useful. Sometimes it's not as useful, but for those of you who have that, don't forget to use them when you're tuning into the live stream. It's easy. Just in I have like a list of everybody who has subscribed at that level, and essentially what you do is say like grant hope to whatever the player's name, and then I'll mark that off. They get their hope and they can use it for the month. And so you get that once per month at the $5 level. At the $10 level, you get that twice. And one thing that, maybe a little physical something for you to take is map packs. And so starting basically now in this month of December, we're having map packs. So maps of streamed content, maybe some side quests of certain things. Right now we have a jungle theme map pack that's going, which basically takes you into different encounters for Aishan Island. And so what that'll all include is the different maps that are in there, such as just blank maps, gridless. You have square grids and you have hex grids. Everlast is going to be using hex grids as far as the placement of everything goes and some of the tactics, but you could use it in your own D&D campaigns with your square grids. Or if you don't like grids, you can just use it as just the plain thing, the plain map itself. So however you want to do that, but we have those available.
And Kyle, these are specific maps that we actually have used in our adventures thus far. Is that correct?
Yes, so some of them will be the maps that we've used thus far in the official stream content, and then there will be like extra, for example, like just off a jungle forest encounter or like something there to be able to, add a little bit more to what you're getting from that map pack. Cool. But the ones that we see, again, the final versions are subject to change, but they're the ones that you see in the official stream content of Everlast. So that's something that's really cool too if you want to play that out yourself. And then at the $20 level, so it's the VIP tier, not only do you get access to basically 2 hopes to use per month, you get access to the map packs. And one thing that's really cool with that is if you missed any past map packs, you get all of the map packs that are available.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome. Yeah.
So obviously it becomes like a much better deal the more that this $20 level goes, and we will start basically creating more map packs as soon as we get our first $10 subscriber, essentially, so they can get like the first map packs, and then we'll go on from there, and then we'll have the $20 level. You can get those, and lastly, for those of you who've been listening, you get access to the streamed version of the podcast. We didn't have anybody who had gained access to it previously, but it's a little extra. It's actually a lot of extra content of the streamed content prior to the official, or not streamed content, the recorded content prior to the official stream. So the 2 years of Eclaas Eeas previous, which, it's a lot of fun, and you got to see how it grows. You got to see how it was as a D&D campaign. So that was really fun. So if maybe you want some ideas of how to run your own Everlast Adventures, a D&D campaign, that could be some good inspiration. Well, but again, I figured some of the content was getting a little bit stale, so some of the map packs is something that maybe you guys are interested in to be able to, play your own adventures.
Well, also for those who are really interested in tabletop RPGs, whether it's Pathfinder, whether it's D&D, whether it's anything, any type of tabletop RPG, I know those of you who DM those probably spend a good amount of money, or at least put a massive amount of time into actually getting these maps and making these maps for your players themselves. Like, they're not cheap. Like, a map pack is probably incredibly expensive just to go out and buy if you wanted to do so, whereas like it's $10 a month to get just the map pack. Like that, like just value itself and just the map pack itself is,
and you get it
more.
forever. You don't get access to it just for the month.
Yeah.
You get it forever as long as you download it within the month. Like you're good to go, and you can use it, print it out on your own. And yeah, it's something that's really good to be able to add, even if you're using it in another campaign. You're like, I need a jungle encounter. This is perfect, and so you pull it out and do your thing with it.
Yeah, and I mean, just value itself, it's incredible. Like you're getting amazing value, and you're also supporting the creation of this game. So we're trying to make these tiers useful for you guys, basically, is what it is. And hopefully you feel like you're getting value out of it. I definitely think you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. And again, if anything, you're supporting an amazing game to be able to bring to the front, and to be able to bring to the world. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be really cool. But speaking of which, if you're actually curious about what some of these map packs and what some of these like the progress on the game goes, we actually, Kyle, I know you did just recently create an Everlast Instagram account.
I did. So as basically, it's all going to be involved with all the content in lots of art, lots of maps, lots of, fun things, maybe some videos and stuff down the line of the official creation and kind of the progress of it. And to keep up to date with you guys, I know like twice a month maximum is not always easy to be able to understand like the progress and like actually like how much this game is coming along. And so that's your way to be able to help, and not only be able to help by looking at it, but sharing the content out there to be able to get people excited for it. Obviously, the more demand for this game, and the more people that are getting behind this, the quicker that it comes out, and like the more profitable it will be for all of you. The more that this gets into the hands of just more and more people, the more they can be touched by this beautiful world of Everlast.
And I mean, I completely agree. And so, Kyle, what is the Instagram name so that they can follow it?
Yes, it is Everlast. So EVERLAST RPG _ official.
Okay.
So Everlast RPG _ official.
And this will be posted in the description below the video, so you guys are able to find that there. And if we can get a link to it as well, you can just click the link and just follow the Instagram for sure.
Yeah, follow, share the content that's on there. We're really proud of the stuff that we have so far for the game. And especially I love the character art, the character designs, some of kind of our official arts that we have. I've been sharing a lot of those early on, some of the map packs and the exciting stuff that you could potentially get subscribing at the $10 level. And then again, like I said, I want to post like actually videos of some of the progress and what's going on, and later on down the road. But we need a lot of support behind this, not only to motivate us to keep going, but to build the community to be something big, to be something strong. And ultimately, your prayers too are something that is so important going forward. This game is an essentially Christian world, and that's the view that we want to be able to bring out. So once you're done playing this game, it's not like, oh, that was just a fun game, but you actually learn good life lessons, and like you feel closer to God after playing a session of this, and hopefully bringing people closer to Jesus. That's something that is really important to us as well here at Fantasy Forge.
Of course. And again, that's our goal, is to give you a 10 out of 10 day, and hopefully give you some more hope in your life, and to be able to bring you closer to something that is truly rooting and truly beautiful. And I feel like Everlast is a game that really promotes that. I know at the very least for me, every time I finish an Everlast session, yes, it's freaking at like 5 a.m. in the morning for us here in Japan. But I definitely feel at peace, and I feel like it was worth my time, and it made my weekend better. And I definitely feel like it's gonna help every one of you too, just like the storytelling, the game itself, and just like a lot of work's being put into it. So we have that intention going in, so hopefully you feel that in the final product. Yeah. But speaking of which, I know Kyle has been joining us for Everlast. Obviously, that's been his main thing that he's been really focusing on with us. But by popular demand, People really like you, Kyle. I know it's hard to believe, but people really like you out there on the channel. Starting in the new year at some point, I know Kyle is intending to become a main face here at Fantasy Forge Studios, aside from just our Everlast streams. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, as much as you have planned ahead at this point, of course?
Yes, as much as I have planned at this point. So I am going to try to be streaming here on Fantasy Forge Studios, video games, all kinds of RPGs, that kind of stuff. Also, potentially streaming some, other RPG, like tabletop RPG stuff as well. But as far as the video game side of it, Monday mornings, Wednesday mornings, and Friday mornings here in Japan. Tentatively.
Yeah.
And the time frame that I'm tentatively looking at is between 7 to 10 p.m. or p.m. a.m. Japan time, JST. And so whatever that time is for you guys,
it's literally 12 hours from my stream. So it's just the opposite. So the intention is obviously to reach wider audiences, right? I feel like Kyle and I are basically the same person anyway. So if we can have the Kyle version of Forged streaming to different audiences as well, hopefully this also helps expand the reach of Fantasy Forge Studios. We're streaming to people that we wouldn't normally be reaching consistently. But also it allows us to get more games, more content into the channel itself. I know, again, as one person, I can only do so much. And I know Cole and Max do it twice a month, right? So they can only do so much as well. And I mean, Kyle's an amazing person. He's a faithful man. And hopefully I know he'll bring you that 10 out of 10 day that I know you're desiring. So it'll be good.
It'll be good. Yeah, and I actually do plan on my first official game streaming is Bravely Default 2. And so for those who don't know, it's a Square Enix game that stemmed way back on the 3DS with the original Bravely Default, which came actually originally from a DS game, which was supposed to be the sequel to a game called Final Fantasy and the Four Warriors of Light. Or Heroes of Light, maybe Four Heroes of Light. But it was a game that kind of was the original, where you like put on different hats and you have different jobs and stuff. But they kind of ditched that idea and then went with Bravely Default, and we have the Bravely Default. And so I actually played the original content. Unfortunately, I have no way to stream 3DS games without being illegal about it, and I don't want to do that.
Hopefully they bring it to the Switch at some point.
Yes, the Switch, whether it's a digital download or whatever the case, but Bravely Default 2 did come to the Switch. And I played a little bit of it back then, and I had to put it down just because life got crazy. And obviously, it was right in the middle of my move over here to Japan and whatnot. And I really wanted to pick it up. And so we'll be starting a brand new game of Bravely Default 2 together, which will be really fun and hopefully cool to watch for you guys.
And I mean, honestly, this is doubling our content here on this channel. So in the new year, crazy. We're going to be having hopefully 3 more streams added on to the week. And with Everlast too, I mean, we have lots of things coming. Again, we're going to be sharing lots on the Instagram. Hopefully we can continue to grow this game to the lengths that we know that it can grow. And again, it can only be done with your support by sharing. If you can give financially funding through the Patreon. Also, I know merch sales. Again, this is one of our merch items. It's not Everlast related, but one of our merch items. All proceeds go towards the creation of the game, or just like your general donations themselves. But of course, Kyle, what is the most important way for them to be able to support us?
Prayers.
Yes.
Always. And sharing our content too. That always helps.
That helps quite a bit. Prayers and sharing. So if you can do that, definitely it's really good. And if you have an Instagram, please consider following that page. Again, all those links will be in the about section below. Not the about section, this isn't Twitch. The description down below here on YouTube. So feel free to click that. And of course, if you've missed out on any content and you're new here, and maybe this is the first ever podcast or first ever video about Everlast that you've seen, all of our content is on our Fantasy Forge official YouTube channel. So go over there. It's we got tons of content, not just Everlast. We got Fantasy Forge, just general gameplay content. And in the future, we're going to be adding tons more to the YouTube. And then, of course, consider following us on Twitch for all of our live interactions as well. So I don't know.
Also, before jumping away here,
Mhm.
we have something to mention about Discord potentially.
Discord, yes, potentially. So I know that we have actually talked about this a little bit in the past. Maybe some of our first couple podcasts. We mentioned this, but Kyle actually does run campaigns of obviously Everlast as well. But he runs what is it called, Kyle? Lord of the Rings.
Adventures of Middle Earth.
Adventures in Middle Earth, which is a basically D&D 5e supplement that actually officially came out. I'll let you talk about it. I don't know about it as much as you do, but what is it exactly, Kyle?
Yes, so it's a D&D campaign supplement that it was made by Cubicle 7, and I don't know if they're still coming out with content. Probably not, considering how expensive all the source books and material are. It's crazy. But Adventures of Middle Earth is basically a supplement for the world of Middle Earth, and so it's high fantasy, not quite as high fantasy as D&D, as in there's not as much emphasis in magic and all that kind of stuff. But it essentially, the main story takes place 5 years after the fall of Smaug. So between the adventures of the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, and so what's happening in Middle Earth during that period, and it starts. There's all kinds of adventures that you can go on. All kinds of region guys to be able to help DMs and whatnot. But there are some different things that happen, or like some different kind of rule sets that are additions to the traditional D&D. And I love Middle Earth, I love Tolkien, and I desperately want to run a campaign on that. And unfortunately, being here in Japan, it's very difficult to be able to find players, and I want to be able to stream that campaign out to the world, to be able to experience some of this excitement that's going on. Unfortunately, again, being in Japan, it's very difficult. It's very difficult just in general, just getting the guys, as you notice. In our Everlast streams, we're very, very rarely with the entire troop of the party, because of time differences and obligations and everything. But I am currently looking for potentially 3 to 4 players to be able to, take the dive into the official streamed content of Adventures in Middle Earth, and hopefully stream that here on the Fantasy Forge YouTube. Or YouTube and Twitch.
Yep. So if you are interested, or say even interested in Everlast or anything like that, potential side campaigns that may be going by not only the creator himself, how awesome would that be, having like an actual Everlast campaign run with the creator?
Yes, and Everlast, if you're interested in playing that, even some kind of play testing. Again, if as a play tester, just take things as they come. But if you're even interested in that a little bit, we would love to talk with you and see where you're at with that.
Exactly. So feel free to join the Fantasy Forge Discord. So those of you who don't know what Discord is, you're old people. No, I'm joking. Discord's been very new to me as well. But we will be posting the Discord link in the description as well. So feel free to join. Everyone's welcome. It's one of the kindest and most supportive communities out there.
Really.
Truly, it is. And everyone looks out for each other. We have a bunch of fun things. We do Discord game nights. We have movie nights every single Monday night. When I'm not streaming my specific content, 7 p.m. to about 10 p.m. Japan Standard Time. We do movie nights as well. We just finished up the Lord of the Rings trilogy and all the Hobbits, and we're going to be doing some Christmas movies. I think we're doing Home Alone and one other movie. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, on Monday of this week. So we have lots of fun things that we do. Again, it's just a wonderful, amazing community, and everyone's kind, caring, and they just look out for each other. So consider joining, and also we have an Everlast section in there, as well as a tabletop RPG section in there, where you can talk to all of us about potentially wanting to play Adventures of Middle Earth, or potentially wanting to play Everlast, playtesting, that kind of stuff. Again, we're looking for all kinds of things and all kinds of people to join our wonderful community and help us enjoy the wonderful hobby of tabletop RPG and just video games in general. So if you're interested at all, feel free considering joining the Discord. And if you don't want to join the Discord, we do actually have a Fantasy Forged email as well. So you can feel free to email us at teamforged@fantasyforgestudios.com. So you can feel free to email us that too if you don't have a Discord and you're interested. Although I do please consider getting a Discord, because that's just way easier for everyone. So but if you are interested, feel free to email that email, and I will get back to you, or Kyle will get back to you about potential playtesting or joining a campaign. But I don't know. Is there anything else, Kyle? I mean, that's a lot of announcements before the end of the year,
Yeah.
honestly.
Well, I will say one more thing about that. I know we're the vast majority of people. There are websites, Reddits, Reddit feeds, all kinds of stuff that people are always looking for a DM. It's so much easier to be a player than it is to be a DM.
Mhm.
This is your opportunity as a free DM to be able who's actually looking for players on the
Mhm.
opposite side.
Mhm.
To be able to kind of help, and that content will most likely, if we do any kind of streamed content, will most likely be on Wednesdays. So if
Mhm.
you're interested, Wednesdays probably around Dane's normal stream time, which is what is it, 7
7
to 10,
p.m. Yeah. I mean, it could
7
be any
p.m. to
time. It's
10.
based off of whatever time you want to do it. I'm not streaming at all that day, so
Mhm.
just whenever you're available to do so. But Wednesdays are the best days. For
Yeah,
sure.
Wednesdays. And so if we're able to do so, if that's something that you're very interested in and you're looking for a DM to maybe play a Middle Earth themed campaign, or if you are really interested in Everlast, just reach out to us. We really, really would love to hear from you.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just the thing, too. Like, we're a community and we're here to support each other. And we're here to enjoy wonderful nerd culture and in a wonderful, kind and caring place, you know? And
Mhm.
so, if we can grow together as a community and get this game out here and just enjoy it in the meantime, that's the best thing we could ever ask for, right? So,
Exactly.
all right. Well, I don't know if there's any other announcements. I guess the next session for Everlast itself will be in January. Do you have that date off the top of your head, Kyle?
I do actually. It's going to be January 14th, so it's
Okay.
Saturday, the 14th.
Okay,
So
so come join us Saturday, January 14th for session 17, our first session of the new 2023 year. And have a blessed Christmas season, have a blessed winter. Be safe, enjoy,
Happy
spend
New
some time
Year.
with, yeah, Happy New Year. Spend some time with family and friends, and let's just enjoy a wonderful start to the new year together. So,
And may Alomnia guide each and every one of you.
exactly. All right, bye everyone. See you then.